let's move to the Devin Booker situation, because we've heard his name mentioned a lot. And I like Devin Booker as a player. I love the hometown connection. I love how he puts on for the city. I love all that stuff. And he's top player of his generation, easily. Mm-hmm. And so the question for me just really becomes, is he a great fit for this team and what this team is trying to build? To me, that is the most important thing, along with at what cost. Mm-hmm. At what cost? I'm not by any means saying he wouldn't help this team offensively, right? But what are you losing on and off the court? That's the biggest thing for me. And adding a Devin Booker requires losing a lot of depth. Plain and simple. You look at the two teams headed to the finals right now, and you look at the two teams who they beat, right? The Thunder, they go 10 deep? Yeah. The Wolves, T-Wolves, who they beat, go 8. Yep. The Pacers, they go 9-10 deep? Mm-hmm. The Knicks go 7 deep. Mm-hmm. So there's a reason why in a 7-game series, you see one team gassed by game 6, 7, and the other running at full capacity. And it looks like, to me, from my point of view, bro, that teams more and more are kind of being built on depth. They have a style of play that fits their personnel, right? Their star. And then they got a bunch of high-level guys who identify with that particular style. Right. So if you add a Devin Booker at $50 million a year, you're not going to have the depth of a Jaden Ivey and a Ron Holland and an Isaiah Stewart and a Malik Beasley. Like, you're not going to have that. Some of those guys are going to be lost because of that. So for me, at that point, you look like the T-Wolves, right? A good two-headed monster, but not enough to sustain, like, depth-wise in a long playoff series against teams who are deeper. So that's my initial thought with Booker. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and granted, like you said, this is going to be a big risk type of a deal. This is an idea that I would at the very least entertain. I'm not high on the idea of it, and I'll break it down a little bit further why. I just want to kind of get into this surface level for now. Yeah. This is an idea that I would at least entertain, just knowing who Devin Booker is, knowing the needs of the Detroit Pistons. This makes sense. A guy like Derek White is not a guy you break down your core for. I'm sorry. Like, if you show up to the party with Derek White as your number 2, thinking you stunting around a bunch of Rolls Royces, I'm throwing you out the party, bro. I'm sorry. Devin Booker is worth that discussion. I love Trey Murphy. He's worth breaking down your core for.
Nice.
Bro, those are the guys. Like, I don't think it's gonna happen, but if you had a chance to get someone like Giannis or like any of these high level guys, like, those are the guys you break your core down for. Go ahead.
Imagine if Giannis came here and we had Greek Town here. It would go crazy, bro.
About that.
Isn't that wild? I mean, just from a money perspective, it would be insane. What you could do so much with that. Anyway, but I'm not saying I'm on Giannis. I just think if that happened and it was a bad trade, that would be the silver lining.
That's going to have to be the first selling point if they do try to.
You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, for sure.
Greeks out for you, man. But back to Booker. Again, I like him as a player. I'm not as high on the idea anymore, just for a few different reasons. Obviously, again, I'm a big fan of Jaden Ivey, and seeing the growth that he's made, I think it would be way too early to give up on that, because based on a lot of teams that we've seen, if you look at teams like the Nets who traded, or the Knicks who traded 4 or 5 unprotected picks to get Mikal Bridges, the Rudy Gobert trade that Minnesota made, taking off their capital to get him. Even the same thing with the Nets when they're trying to go after Kevin Durant.
Right.
Same exact situation. Like, you don't see these kind of deals really like surfacing the winning expectations that teams are looking for right now. And a team like the Pistons, you're not just trying to be good right now. You want to be able to sustain your winning future for as long as your losing went on for.
Right.
So if you want to try to keep all of that in lock, I'm okay with them being patient and not crashing out for somebody like Devin Booker. I feel like if they were to make a big splash move, I understand why it would be a trade, but I don't think it would be at the detriment of costing 3-4 different picks and 2 of your core guys as well. Even including Tobias in it, I don't love it. I don't love including Ivey in it. I've seen ideas where Isaiah Stewart is in it. I don't really love that either.
Absolutely not.
I just don't think, again, you're going to have to take a risk. I totally understand that, but it has to be calculated and understanded for some reason. Like, if for some reason Booker gets injured in the first year of, him getting traded over here, that's a season gone. And Cade is back in heliocentric mode again.
Exactly.
I just don't think you're in a position where you have the depth, the experience, or the talent around to be able to make those kind of implosions. Like, you got to be a little bit more patient with that. Again, I like Devin Booker. I really like where he's going in his career, but I don't know. I feel like teams like maybe Houston would be a little bit better suited for a guy like him instead of the Pistons crashing out and going to get everything to get him.
Yeah, I agree with you, bro. And just going back to that depth piece, because you mentioned how injuries would be very much more impactful if you make a move like that because of the depth you have to get up. It's not really next man up anymore. It's hope he don't get hurt. It's hope he gets up.
Right,
that's what it comes down to.
Yep.
And like, you think about just going back into the past a little bit, right? Think about the difference between the Pistons winning in 2004 and them losing in 2005. The biggest reason was depth.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? In 2004, they were 9-10 deep. In 2005, they were like 7 deep. Lindsey Hunter and McDyess off your bench. You know what I mean? So like, guys like Mike James, Corliss, Okur, those guys were gone. And you saw it in game 7 of that series. It just didn't have enough. So I always say, not to go too deep into that, but I always say, if they kept that team intact, they would be back-to-back champions like the Bad Boys. So depth is important, bro. So another thing I want to consider too is, like we talked about building that foundational culture. Does Devin Booker really fit the style of play defensively that the Pistons are trying to play now?
No.
You know what I mean? Like, he's not the worst defender in the world, but somebody mentioned it earlier in the comments that it seems like he's aging fast, and it does feel to me like he never really truly relied on his athleticism 100%. He was always a very high IQ player, fundamental player, but it does seem like he's kind of losing half a step as far as his athleticism. So I don't know how long he's going to be at this level. And he's not old, he's 28. But that worries me as well. And for a team that is trying to be scrappy, gritty, tough, I want strong, athletic guys.
Yeah. Guys
who can ball hog, guys who can, guard you 94 feet like we saw the Pacers just do against Jalen Brunson. That type of stuff. So does Booker even add to your ability to create turnovers and get out in transition? Or maybe a guy like Jaden Ivey is better suited to do that? At this stage, I'm not saying Jaden Ivey is better than Devin Booker. No, I'm not saying that. But can he at least come close? Yeah. And the key to me is that he's young and he's right now a very willing defender, an improving defender. Who's one of the fastest players in the league. He makes $40 million less this season. I mean, doesn't it make more sense to just keep the guy that fits your style of play at the very least for this season?
I would be more willing to entertain the idea if there were like glimpses that we saw between either Ivey or Cade. If there were moments between how they played this past season, if there were times where Cade was chucking too much and Ivey was getting it going, like remember when in OKC where Kevin Durant would get hot or James Harden would get hot, and then Russ would come down and just shoot their momentum right out and just start missing. If they had any of that friction, I would think, okay, maybe it's time to get something a little bit more stable. We haven't seen any of that between Cade and Ivey. Cade is very aware enough to see, okay, he's getting it going right now. Remember the game against Miami where they came back from, I think, 8 or 9 down. Tim Hardaway Jr. came down, hit 3 triples in a row. And Cade had to find him on 2 different fast break possessions, knowing that he's the hot man. That kind of understanding and gelling is very important. So if you bring in a star like Devin Booker, for what you just said, based on culture and understanding of the roster, there's not really much to say that he would be willing to defer to the young guys and let them get theirs instead of, okay, let me go try to play Superman and get us back into this. Again, it's not to say that he would or wouldn't. We just haven't seen the proof that makes the gamble safe enough. So knowing that Cade and Ivey have that dynamic where they work well together, they're both very selfless players, good at making second level passes, setting up JD, setting up Tobias for a 3, setting up Beasley for a 3. Like those kind of plays and that kind of chemistry, you don't really sleep on, especially when we haven't seen it to the completion yet because of the injuries that the core has dealt with for the past few seasons. So I don't know. I don't like the idea. I mean, maybe a few years ago it sounded good just knowing Devin Booker's Michigan ties and all that. But at this point, the idea just kind of seems a little less sexy than it did before, more and more every year.
Agreed. That was 4 years ago now when they were in the finals. right, against the Bucks. And the Bucks, they were up 2-0, and the Bucks came back and beat them. That was 4 years ago, right? So, I'm just saying, keep that in mind too. And you mentioned the injury history, and not the history, but just the injuries that have really made it tough to really see what these guys can be at their peak, right? And just think about, imagine Jaden and Ausar creating turnovers, bro, and getting out in the break.
Bruh.
We didn't see that at all last year because they didn't start at all last year, not one game.
Yep.
When Jaden got hurt, Ausar returned from the blood clot. So we never even saw the potential of those guys. Ball hawking, 94 feet, like we mentioned. Like, we have the athletes to do it, and they're willing to do that. That's important. They're leading with that, and that's what the Pistons' identity is. So on the other side of that, though, with Devin Booker, like I mentioned, he's 28, so he's not old, but he's not getting younger, and he doesn't fit the timeline as well, right? We always talk about these guys, peaking at the right time. 3-4 years from now, where is this group gonna be, right? You think about, if we bring DBook in now, 3-4 years from now, he's 32, and you're still paying him max money. And by that time, how good is he going to be defensively?
Right.
You know what I mean? So you can mean that much to a guy who really may be the liability in your starting five defensively. So for me, I'm playing the long game. Like, I feel that's the best course of action when you have so much young talent on your team.
Yeah, I think at this point, if I'm Trajan Langdon, I'm not just like, this isn't the Boston Celtics. Boston can afford to make deals where they only need to rely on a guy for a season or two. Like anyone who watches football, like the New England Patriots, when they had Tom Brady, they brought in so many guys on 1-year deals and just got rid of them the next year because they knew their future was Tom and everybody else is expendable.
Great point.
The Pistons are not in a position now where they can just bet on a guy that's maybe good for the next year or two. No, you need to be able to bank on somebody for the next year or two and hope they can give you something for the next 5 as well. Like, you don't, like, when you give out contract extensions, you don't pay guys for what they did last season. You pay for what they can do for you in the future as well. So knowing that we haven't seen the absolute best of Jaden Ivey yet, knowing that maybe guys like Devin Booker or even Derek White have possibly capped out at their peak at this point in their career, it's not really worth investing your future when their future is possibly behind them. So it's just not.
Derek White catching all kinds of
I'm sorry, bro. I'm on it. It was a long week on Twitter. Y'all been annoying me.
And when you knock me down, I'm getting back up. Cause when I step on the floor, you know your time's up. I'm on my way up and I'm not gonna stop. We headed straight to the top in the low. I gotta face it. I got no time to waste